All right. Hello and welcome everyone to the next installment of the International Leadership Series. My name is Dr. Nicholas Hudson, and I serve as the Director of the Office of Student Orientation, Leadership and Engagement. Really thrilled that you all are joining us on this continuation of our theme this year on peace and conflict. Peace and conflict is one of the 7 elements of global citizenship as defined by Oxfam. One of the 7 ones. The elements of global citizenship include sustainable development, social justice and equity, human rights, peace and conflict, which is our theme for this year, identity and diversity, power and governance, globalization and interdependence. All 7 of those components make up what Oxfam and other institutions believe makes one a global citizen, right? And so part of our curriculum in the Office of Student Orientation, Leadership and Engagement, as well as international engagement, of which this is a joint initiative, we try to educate students around these issues. So this program is one of the more I would say prestigious leadership programs that we have here at the institution. Not only is it a lecture series, but for those that participate and sign up, get to be eligible to become an International Leadership Fellow. For those that are interested, an International Leadership Fellow have to attend 5 of the 6 series, as well as participate in the Art for Social Change competition that we have available in the spring, of which those that complete the program will be eligible to be recognized at the Emerging Leader Celebration in April, as well as receive a medal, which is the only leadership program that receives a medal of recognition that's designed for this program in particular. As we look at overall and we delve into our topics across different, I would say, topics, we are trying to establish kind of a baseline of knowledge for those participating in our program. So we want to at least provide some definitions that will help you navigate not only this one, but maybe you come to some future topics. So we want everyone to at least be aware of these specific things. You'll be receiving a survey, an assessment, asking you to define this. So we define peace in 2 different forms. Positive peace is defined as the attitudes, the institutions, and structures that create and sustain peaceful societies, as well as there can also be a negative peace, right? It just means that there's an absence of violence or a fear of violence, right? We also want to define what is conflict. So conflict, again, is something that's conceptually defined as either intense interpersonal or intrapersonal dissonance, right? You can either be having tension or antagonism between 2 or more parties, right? So it could be 2 state actors, an individual and an individual, a group of people against an individual. And we begin to see peace and conflict take place on a global scale, especially with the recent terrorist attacks in Israel. And across the globe as well. So we begin to see not only from state sponsor actions, but also individualized actions as well. And throughout the course of all of this kind of knowledge that we're looking at, we want to at least have a generalized understanding of what is social justice. And social justice that runs kind of the breadth of all of our programming here is the inclusion of everyone in the full benefits of society, and that everyone is empowered to participate fully in the cultural, economic, political, and social life of a society and country. So again, when we look at kind of the different topics throughout our time together, it's important to understand power and how does power play out in what we're looking at and what are we actually analyzing. It is the ability or the official authority to decide what is best for others, right? It's the ability to decide who has access to resources. In our first conversation this year, we talked about Indigenous folk in Brazil and Ecuador, and really you had an idea to see who had resources around access to those resources, whether it was land or rights to that land. And that it also powers the capacity to exercise control over others. We also notice that inherently in any society, we have social constructs, especially related to the differing identities that we have, right? And so when we have a conversation around this, it's related to privilege, and it's really this understanding of unearned access to resources that are only readily available as a result of maybe your advantaged social group membership. And I think this does come into play throughout all of our conversations. And when we talk about power and governance, peace and conflict, it's really important to understand that there are those that exercise power over those that may be oppressed. And so oppression is defined as a system that maintains advantage and disadvantage based on social group membership. And I think that will come into play both at an individual and institutional and cultural level. Today's topic around organized crime on social media really looks at maybe some institutional, individual, as well as cultural aspects. So today's topic, again, is organized crime trends on social media. I think it's an extremely relevant topic as it relates to kind of our location here on the US-Mexico border, but also our location in time, right? Social media being ingrained into our society, we continue to have seen an increase in trafficking across the board as it relates to human rights violations, but also just this concept of human trafficking. And so today, we're very excited to bring with you one of our faculty, a double alumna from the institution here, Dr. Nilda Garcia. So I'm going to turn it over to her, but let's give her a dust devil welcome.
Is this good? Everybody on the back? Yes, good. Okay, guys, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much for being here. I'm Dr. Garcia, and today I'm going to be presenting to you organized crime trends on social media. So I'm going to start with a very general overview of a landscape of all these criminal actors that actually have presence on social media. I'm going to talk about two specific cases or two specific examples, which are my main area of research actually right now. The first one is going to be the case of the Mexican drug cartel. So I'm going to be presenting to you the presence of the Sinaloa cartel on social media and also the Zetas. If you are familiar with the criminal organizations in Mexico, we know that the Zetas is split already into two groups, Cartel Noreste and Zetas Old School. However, when I was doing this research, the Zetas were one of the main powerful cartels in Mexico at that time, circa 2015, 2018. My next example is going to be migrant smuggling in the US-Mexico borderland. So I'm going to be talking about migrant smugglers on Facebook and on TikTok. And finally, I'm going to conclude and talk a little bit about my future research. So there is a strong presence of criminal organizations on social media platforms like Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat has been increasingly used by various types of criminal organizations. Most of the time they do it, and this is a big one, to recruit new members, send threatening messages, not only between them, the rivals, they also use it to send threatening messages to civilians and also to the government or government officials. They use it to promote their organizations or criminal activities. And one main one, especially for terrorist organizations, is to spread terror. Although Mexican drug cartels, they have also been using, especially the new organizations, using these platforms specifically for this, to spread terror as well. So this is some examples of criminal organizations that have a wide presence on social media platforms. Just some examples because there's more groups that actually are in these platforms or have presence in these platforms. First of all, Mexican drug cartels, we have the Sinaloa, we have Jalisco New Generation, we have CDN for Mercedes, we have the Gulf Cartel, we have gangs there, we have Malas de la Trucha or MS-13, Barrio 18, we have Primero Comando do Capital from Brazil, and we have Comando Vermelho from Brazil as well. There are several terrorist organizations that use social media that we have or have some presence of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, Taliban, Hezbollah. We can also find human traffickers and migrant smugglers. These are some examples of some of the pages of these criminal organizations. Let me see if I can use a pointer. Here we have MS-13. We have the gangs in Brazil, PCC and CV. We have ISIS. This is a video on TikTok of people actually recruiting for MS-13 and other terrorist organizations. So why in general criminal organizations use social media? So they use it because it's cheap and it's accessible. You just need access to internet in order to access these accounts or access these criminal activities. It facilitates a quick flow of information, interact with followers in real time. You can disseminate your messages on a large scale without censorship of traditional mainstream media. It is still a highly unregulated space. Criminal organizations quickly evolve and adapt. So as we see the evolution of social media, we're gonna see an evolution of the strategies of these cartels, how to use social media and their strategies and their business models. New social media platforms come out. These criminal organizations are adopting them for different strategies and to different targets. These are other examples of criminal activities that take place on social media platforms. We have drug sales. And guys, actually, I did this with a colleague that I work with in Washington. It was not very hard to actually get the product. We didn't get it, right? But the process of it was not hard. It's just like they have these pages, they have emojis for the products, and then it's just like immediate 5 messages. They only ask for the products that you want to get and also the address, and that's about it. It's not hard, and they actually started using this or doing this more during COVID because they didn't have the parties anymore and the social life. So they actually they used it more in Snapchat and Instagram to sell the products. There's also illicit antiques trafficking. Wildlife is a huge one on social media platforms. They sell big cats, they sell reptiles, birds, primates, insects, wildlife products made from endangered species such as elephant ivory, rhino horns, marine turtle shells. There's a lot of love scams. Actually, there's a Netflix series about this. It's like the Tinder Swindler, I think it's called. So this is a huge criminal activity on the social media platforms. And also there are trade of human remains, like bones, for example. So now that I have given you like a picture of all these criminal organizations and social media, some other criminal activities, I want to take you deeply into these examples. So the first case that I'm gonna present to you is the presence of Mexican drug cartels on social media. To give you a little bit of background, so Mexico has a long tradition of drug trafficking. It started like a very simple, small family business, and now it turned out into this transnational, multi-billion illicit activity of drug trade. Actually, the Mexican cartels gained power after the demise of Cali and Medellin, these powerful cartels in Colombia. So under the US-led war on drugs, under Plan Colombia, they actually were successful at the demise of these two very powerful cartels. But one of the unintended consequences was that they left these vacuum, right, of power. So they found out that the business of the cocaine business was a multi-billion business. So they wanted to take over. So the cartels of Mexico took over when Cali and Medellin were gone in the mid 1990s. This made drug cartels in Mexico more notorious, and actually they started to get a lot of power. So in 2006, Felipe Calderon gets into office and he declares a war on drugs. And it's not that we were not battling cartels in Mexico before. There were a lot of bilateral agreements between the United States and Mexico to battle these organizations. However, Felipe Calderon did something different, that was the militarization of the war. After that, what we have witnessed, instead of actually what happened in Colombia that was successful and we saw the demise of Cali and Medellin cartels, in Mexico, this hasn't happened, even though they have been successful at getting main kingpins, for example, El Chapo, a very famous one. They have been successful at, actually some organizations have disappeared, but we still have the same ones, we have new ones, and we have more powerful organizations in Mexico. So I was wondering why, after almost 2 decades of constant targeting from different fronts, the militarization in Mexico, they fighting against each other, they have intra-cartels rivalry and violence as well. How come drug cartels in Mexico have not only been able to survive, but some of them have also grown in influence and power? So what makes some drug cartels in Mexico so resistant? I went to the literature, and this is my theoretical framework. There is a lot of experts and academics and the epistemic community that they have tried to answer this question. They have come up with various factors. For example, exogenous factors. Excuse me. A lot of experts are going to say that the adoption of neoliberal regimes were actually what actually gave a lot of power to Mexican drug cartels. Why? Because they open borders. It's very hard to actually check all these crossing points to see if they're actually crossing the drugs or illicit substances. Also, one of the terms of the agreement was for Mexico to actually better their infrastructure, and all of these things actually helped the Mexican drug cartels to go about their business in a more successful way. The other one is the UN war on drugs, that it was exported to the world, especially to South America, and there were unintended consequences, and one of them was this vacuum of power left that actually led the drug cartels in Mexico to get more powerful. There are other domestic dynamics, for example, economic factors, geography. Mexico is next to the #1 consumer in drugs in the world. Even though the gap of consumption is closing with Europe, the United States remains the #1 consumer in the entire world. Cultural factors such as the narco culture now is really embedded and normalized in Mexico and maybe internationally. Organization characteristics and structures, typology. This can be a very strong explanatory factor of why some organizations are more powerful than others. And we're going to talk a little bit about the structures in a bit of Sinaloa and the Zetas. What about the media? So in 2011, there was these agreements among traditional media in Mexico. They come together and they signed this agreement that they were not going to actually talk about the cartels anymore, because the cartels were actually using this as free PR, right? So they signed this agreement for the banning of the reporting of cartels on news outlets or traditional outlets, main media. And what they did now, I started seeing in journalistic accounts that it was like a boom of Facebook in Mexico during 2010, more or less. So from 2011 on, we can see or start seeing this presence of cartels or members of cartels on social media. So I was wondering, what about social media? What is the effect of social media on cartel survival capacity? Is the presence of cartels, drug cartels on social media empowering them? So this is like my research design very briefly. So I look at the Mexican cartel's presence on social media. The data from this research was from 2011 to 2018. I did a content analysis on Facebook and Twitter of the Sinaloa cartel and the Zetas cartel, and I conducted a social network analysis. And when I started my research, or the idea of this research, I was wondering if I was going to be having a lot of trouble. Maybe I thought it was going to be very difficult to find these accounts online. So what was my starting point? So I just searched Cartel de Sinaloa on Twitter search bar, now X, and this is what I got. So I got instantly a lot of accounts. I gathered hundreds of accounts. I had to clean my data because a lot of these accounts are actually empty and some of them have a lot of information. So you have to actually clean your databases. I did the same more recently with Cartel del Noreste. I wanted to see if they're actually doing the same thing as previous, like for older cartels. And I got the same results. And one account that actually I found was very interesting was this one here, because they said the account is reclutando a gente para el cartel del noreste. So they're openly recruiting people for this particular cartel. I did like where are they now kind of thing with the Sinaloa cartel. I found, so you know the leadership change, right? So Chapo was the leader of one of the factions of the Sinaloa cartel. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the structure. So we can see that some of the leaders here, they still have their accounts on Twitter. Ovidio Guzman, he was recently captured and extradited into the United States. During the time that I was doing the content analysis, these accounts, these two were actually very active. They're not as active anymore. So I'm assuming they have transferred to other newer platforms such as Instagram or TikTok. There's a lot of presence of cartels on TikTok right now. This one here, I wanted to see if newer cartels or relatively new cartels are using these platforms too. They're using Twitter or X. I found members of Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación. This is an example there. And they say something like puro cuatro letras, que entre el señor Mencho. Mencho is the main leader of the cartel. Grupo Elite, and then a French word, okay? And they have 1,591 followers here. These accounts, they have 30-something thousand followers. So these are the accounts that you can find. I already showed this one. So this is the result of my social network analysis. And I thought that this was very interesting find because this was the Sinaloa cartel on Twitter, now X network. And for the Zetas, it was on Facebook. In the Zetas, it was a little more complicated because I have to do it like manually. But here, it was very interesting, guys, because in the physical world, the Sinaloa cartel has the structures that is called hubs and spokes. And it's gonna be something like this. I'm gonna try to draw it in. Hubs and spokes. And it looks more or less like this, according to experts. So you're gonna have 4 main factions, which were the leaders of these factions were the founders. So here we have the Chapo, Mayo. Here was Pedro Aviles, but he was still late 70s. So this faction here was not long-lived. And here is El Azul, Zaragoza. So these ones here, and Mayo and Chapo, actually got very powerful. What this means is that this is an entire organization, but these cells in particular, or hubs, they have autonomy, so they can actually work independently. And they also have the spokes. So these are like little criminal cells that work in a particular hub of the organization, and they have a lot of them. El Chapo had los Chapitos, at the time Dinosaurs, they have Grupo Antrax, they have many of them. El Mayo have los Mayitos, they have los Demonios and all these criminal cells. What it was very interesting to see is that when I conducted a social network analysis or of their Twitter network, their universe, I actually found that they mirror their physical structures, right? So I could see more or less how this was divided into factions. So here, the central figure in this group number 2 is a Chapo, actually. And you can see here his account or a proxy of his account. You can see their sons are in there. This one is the one from El Mayo. And you can see that it's very, very similar to the one that we assume they have at the physical level. What this structure actually makes is that it makes organization more resilient, right? Because you get one of, or these two leaders, you get rid of them, the organization continues. They have very specific leadership. So the Chapo was gone, his sons actually took over, so they're still going, right? And El Mayo is still there. So this was one of the main findings when I was doing my research or conducting the social network analysis. This is more or less some images that you're gonna find when you make or you get into accounts of members of the Sinaloa cartel. I did the content analysis. Most of their Twitter content, they were talking about operatives or missions. So we'll see videos or posts of say like, we are on our way to a certain community, we're looking for someone, things like this. So they like to actually promote their missions and activities a lot. They sent a lot of threatening messages. And I thought the Sinaloa cartel was gruesome until I went to Los Cetas. I highly recommend not to go into these accounts because I had nightmares. I still have, like, for years. So these threatening messages are gruesome images, are very violent. Sinaloa was not as much. Zetas was, but Zetas actually, they created a critical junction of a before and after in the landscape of criminal organizations in Mexico. They talk about a lot of altruism and recruitment because it's very important for them to have the backup or the support of the community in order for them to actually be successful at conducting their activities. 50% they're gonna promote their very luxurious lives. Sinaloa cartel, they do have a lot of these pictures. In other cartels, it's not as luxurious, but they also promote this a lot of money things, weapons. They talk a lot of philosophy and love, so they have this other side to them as well. And they talk about the organizational status. So when a Chapo was captured, one of the last times, their sons were like saying or communicating through social media that they were the ones that were going to take over because there was like a intra battle there in the cartel between them and Los Damas. And this is the Zetas cartel on Facebook. So I found more activity on Facebook from this cartel at the time. Sinaloa like Twitter better at the time. And this is the same, guys. The Zetas actually, they had a very, not a centralized, very decentralized structure, which was actually as well manifested on social media or how they are, their networks look like on social media. Here, what I found very interesting about this was especially this kind of centrality or this kind of hub there. What do you see? What is this? CDN, which is what? Cartel Noreste. So when I was doing this, again, this was circa 2015, 2018, I actually was able to see the birth of a new cartel, you know? And actually, when I wrote my book about this, I said, like, this probably is gonna be a cartel that is gonna grow, or it's gonna be an armed wing, like the Zetas first, that then became their own cartel. So if you use social media to actually look into what these people are doing and their missions and what the cartel is about, their structures, you can go to social media and find this out, right? And guys, I didn't have anything sophisticated. It was just me and the computer, right? And that was about it. These are some images of content analysis of the Zetas. I found out that they actually recruited younger people compared to Sinaloa, and also a lot of girls, with very young girls. And you can see things like this. I started working as Cartel de los Zetas, so they're very open about what they do. So now, what time do I have? Okay, I don't have a lot of time, guys, so I'm gonna present to you very quickly migrant smuggling on social media. So we know that we are actually in a migrant crisis, not only in our border, but also around the world. So here we can see the Southwest Lands border encounters by CBP from 2019 and how they have increased in 2022. Very quickly, my research design for this particular research area, this particular article, or I'm trying to put together an article with this. So for Facebook, I actually explored accounts from June 2021 to July of the following year. I'm missing a number here. Content analysis, I found this page. They had around 11,300 followers or members. So I follow this page, and it was called Se Lleva Gente Estados Unidos. I examined about 350 posts. And also I examined other pages called Quiero Cruzar la Frontera, Corridos.mx, Coyotes que Cruzan Gente, Viajes a Estados Unidos, Cumple Tus Sueños. If you see here, some of these pages, actually they're misspelled on purpose, so it's not very easy for them to find them, but I found them. So TikTok, I did a content analysis of 116. This is actually a work in progress. TikTok accounts that specifically advertise or offer migrant crossing services on the US-Mexico border. And this study is from April to July of this year. Also, with a colleague of mine, Dr. Gilbrand, he helped me to do a couple of maps, and we use EIS to map these routes. What I found in Facebook and TikTok accounts, excuse me, it's a little bit different. So this is more or less the content analysis or the main actors and interactions on smuggling on Facebook. So there was a lot of people there announcing that they can actually give you fake documents. Others were offering loans, so you can pay for this coyote to cross you into the United States. They have bajadores. These are people that actually bring you from the south of Mexico or other countries into the border, so they leave you there. And then levantadores are the ones that are gonna pick you up once you are in the side of the border and take you to a northern city like in Houston or Dallas or upper in the United States. And most of the accounts were smugglers, where they were advertising their businesses, right, their services. On TikTok was a little bit different because they were emphasizing a lot on security. So in a lot of the accounts, you were going to see that they were assuring that their service and the crossing was 100% safe and guaranteed. They will have a lot of people actually, or the videos in the content on these accounts of people actually saying or recommending this service and saying, oh, I came from Mexico, I'm already in the United States. Very common to see these type of videos. They promote a lot their service by saying, I'm gonna make your dreams come true. I wanna help you. I work so you can have this better life in the United States. We know this is an illegal activity, right? But they promote it like this. It's like, I'm gonna make your dreams come true and you're gonna achieve the American dream. Some of them offer easy crossings, fast crossings, trust the coyote, they say or state their years of experience. Others actually take you and deliver you to customs or border patrol agents. Others are gonna advertise affordable trips. Some of them are thanking God for their services or Virgin Mary for successful crossings. And this is more or less what we found on Facebook. These are border crossing points offered by smugglers in state and cities, and this is the one that they promote on Facebook. So here we can see that the most popular crossing point that they advertise on Facebook is Ciudad Juárez, and then Piedras Negras, Nuevo Laredo, Reynosa, Mexicali, Tijuana. So here we have a mail list through the state of Chihuahua, 22% through Tamaulipas, 12% Coahuila, 11% Sonora, 26% through Baja California. And on TikTok, it's a little bit different. Most of the smugglers that actually are advertising their services on TikTok, we found the crossings that they offer are mainly in Tijuana. Also, what we found is like, in our border is cheaper to cross than the ones in the other side of the Mexican territory, and we thought that was very interesting. And on TikTok, the crossings are also what they offer, and the services they offer are a little bit more expensive. And these are some examples of the interactions between smugglers and migrants on Facebook. So it goes both ways. So a smuggler is gonna actually offer a trip. It's like, tomorrow we have a trip. We have places, so you can come with us, and we're crossing in this particular point, and we are, they're gonna state the price, right? And then they're gonna put some proof of people that are successfully crossing the river at night. And the other way of interacting is that one migrant is gonna look for a coyote, and a lot of coyotes are gonna, or smugglers are gonna respond to these posts offering their services. These are some examples of migrant smugglers accounts on TikTok. So these are the prices that they're offering. And guys, this is just open, it's just there. It's not like it takes you a second to find it. Cruce USA por Tijuana, Tecate, $1,500. It depends from where you're coming and if you want to, because they also offer crossings through formal points of entry. I don't know how they do it, but these are more expensive because you don't have to walk, right? Here they can say, they tell you more or less the route that they're gonna take. Cruces por Mexicali, Tijuana, Tecate. So this is what they're offering, and so on. So conclusions and future research. So again, this is the question. Is social media empowering criminal organizations by facilitating the establishment of more complex and sophisticated illicit networks? Probably yes. They provide ample opportunities to expand their illicit activities, serving as a facilitator to recruit new members, lure migrants, contact other criminal actors which can lead to these criminal networks to further solidify and grow. And also we can see and we can witness a convergence of criminal networks on social media because they actually contact each other through these platforms, right? And why is this important? Why is this research important? So criminal organizations provide a wide amount of information online. So it is possible for us to unveil many characteristics of on their business structures, modus operandi, and actors involved, right? Detect the birth of new criminal cells, like the one that I gave you an example of Cartel del Noreste, that can become powerful cartels. Also, they facilitate the contact between migrants and smugglers. So we don't know if this type of contact is actually exacerbating this illegal activity, or if they're actually transforming the routes from where migrants cross into the United States. So that's one of the questions that I want to ask in future research. We can understand their business models. We know that they have diversified their criminal activities. So now drug traffickers, we can see that they are involved in human smuggling. We knew this because of our region that we live in, but there is also actually projected on social media. It is important because we can identify these crimes and protect young people from being recruited and maybe migrants not to go into the wrong hands with these smugglers that they are advertising their services on social media. So future research, I want to see into the evolution of the cartels. Like for example, for Sinaloa, at the time they were on Facebook, Twitter. I did a little bit of YouTube, but I want to expand my research into Instagram and TikTok to see if they have changed anything, right? So that's one of my future research areas that I want to explore. And the other one is to see and look more into the smuggling routes, migrant smuggling routes on social media and see if they have actually transformed some migration patterns, and if it's possible for us to actually answer this question through the information given through social media. So with this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for being here again, and I hope you enjoy my presentation. Thank you so much.
So what we'll do now is we'll open it up for some questions. This is like shocking. I mean, the things that I don't know, that I think boggles our mind, especially as it relates to social media. And like, I don't even go on TikTok that often. So the fact that folks are using it for that. So we'll open it up to questions. What questions do some of y'all have? Yes, right here.
I have a question about media regulation. Why do you think platforms
That's a very good question, and that's a huge debate. Actually, I do consultancies with Meta and with TikTok, and we talk a lot about this. They're concerned about these issues. On Twitter, now X, I went into actually their their platform and what was permitted or not. And actually all the content that the Mexican drug cartels post in there is not according to the regulations or according to the platform. It was not as enforced before Elon Musk. I don't know if it's gonna be enforced with Elon Musk because it's more like more free speech rather than no regulation. For Meta, they have tried to actually do that. They were very successful at getting rid of ISIS in the platform. They haven't been as successful targeting drug trafficking member accounts on their platform, but they are certainly working on it. And with the smugglers, we have the same conversation. Again, it's very complicated for them. They have to have very specialized teams in order for them to actually identify these accounts. They're making efforts, but it hasn't been enough.
So I guess on that same topic here, are you noticing when Meta, for example, they just recently had a very large decrease in their workforce, right? So they had a very large layoff. Are they cutting from those teams? Do you know if they're cutting from those teams? Because that doesn't seem to be the content regulation as you're talking about, or right?
I know Elon Musk did.
Yeah.
But even if they cut from their teams, what they try to do is a very automatization of like search engines and specific words. And that doesn't work because you have to know the language and you have to know the agriculture in order for you to identify. And then in smugglers, they purposely misspell a lot of words. So if you do it automatically, it's not gonna work. So even they have the people now, it's just the same process that they use.
Yeah, so it's probably not as effective. Right here, you want?
Thank you so much for the very interesting presentation, but just kind of like, connected to these two questions. Have these networks also been used by, the other side? Like, has anybody, engaging in any one of the actions that, you know, you listed in the beginning
Uh-huh.
has been caught, like have they been used by the criminal justice system in any way to have access to some of these people?
They have actually. They have actually in Mexico. Another of the cases that I included in my research, my doctoral dissertation, was Caballeros Templarios, which is a cartel that has been debilitated a lot, and they use a lot of YouTube. So YouTube gives a lot of information because you can see the environments and you can see the locations. And they believe that it was because of that exposure that they were able to capture the leader at the time. And that ended, or mostly ended, with the organization. They have targeted human smugglers, but they also targeting the migrants. So they have used, yeah, they use it too.
Right here, go ahead.
I was gonna ask you like the same thing for that she did, just like I guess like it's where like the legal liability of like social media content, like can you use it in the case? Like how like can you trace someone like you post something, can you actually use that post like yo, this is a crime, like in a legal case? And the second is like do you feel like law enforcement agencies both a lower scale and the higher scale like federal level should be using more of this as like a better targeting to the technique to catch these criminals? Because for example, LPD, Laredo Police Department, could probably just go in a couple Facebook groups and find people like selling drugs or like doing smuggling. What do you think about that?
That is a little bit outside my scope of research, but I'm pretty sure they can use it. It's just open information out there. No.
Right here.
I was gonna say, related to this conversation, I know we're mentioning how like these social media groups are not doing much to censor these like situations from happening. Do you believe they should? Because also we're seeing that it can be used by the other side to better. But again, you run the risk of more people getting included.
In that case of drug cartels and the recruiting of young people, probably, and the gruesome images that they have, I'm shocked every time I look at this because it's just there. Everyone can access to it. Kids can access to it. They actually get very infatuated by these organizations. In that case of recruitment of young people, probably they can make a better job. When I was talking to Meta and the human smuggling issue, that's a great area because a lot of human rights organizations, they say don't close this channel of communications because there's a lot of people that even though it is a criminal activity, they're escaping for their lives. So if you close this channel of communications, it's gonna be very hard for them to get rid of this life-threatening situation. So there is a great, there is like, it's very hard to take a side, you know.
Right here. Yep.
We're just scared that maybe the cartel might, I guess, send you a threat or something, kind of like exposing, I guess, what they kind of do, you know.
I'm not really because they're exposing themselves. Like I'm just using the information they actually just put out there and it's public, and I'm just taking an empirical take on it. And I think that's it. Like I'm not reinventing the wheel or outing people. But yeah, when I was doing my research, I did a lot. I used a lot of fake accounts and things like this. So
I wonder.
Another question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, you mentioned that you had published a book. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Don't you ever get worried that there's a way that as much as you're tracking them, they can also find a way of tracking as well?
Probably they can. Like they're very sophisticated.
Yeah.
So you cannot hide
Yeah.
from them.
Right here. Yeah.
Actually, yes, I actually want to add to that. What's your name again?
Ricky, yeah. Ricky.
Ricky.
My name's Harrington. Unfortunately, a lot of these platforms have allowed modding of a certain topic to be constantly spread every second. And one of the issues with modding accounts is there and then these accounts are spread and constantly reposted or retweeted on platforms
Oh, yeah.
like X, and you know, unfortunately, back to it's what you said. These platforms allow anonymity and are practically impossible unless you have data from those companies to track those accounts. And you know, as you also mentioned, it is extremely you know, unfortunate that these companies are having issues tackling these problems, these advertisements of criminal activity. So it is you know, extremely difficult for any type of backtracking to who really the original account are. And you know, there are multiple cases where accounts are IP banned, but unfortunately, we have things like virtual private networks that allow others to connect to other parts of the world. So hypothetically, the amount of times people can constantly advertise about these criminal activities can be infinite. And it's a shame, really, because you mentioned in your presentation that usually the audience that are bringing themselves up to be in these gangs, these cartels, are young, susceptible people, especially because you know how women can be, and some of them are unfortunately put into human trafficking. And a lot of that is very extremely exploited, and especially because our generation is very, I usually forget the word, we're susceptible, they're very susceptible to types of what you can consider propaganda from these organizations. It just makes them want to join these organizations for younger audience, especially if they are uneducated, more widespread.
Thanks. That's a lot to take in there. Yeah, yeah.
That's very good.
It's some good points. And I
Yeah,
think
another
this
one.
gets to kind of really the thought process of social media, right? To one person, it may be a truth, right? In fact, we have social media platforms that are geared towards the truth, right? Where to one individual, when they're posting on social media, you may have them advocating, you know, one thought and someone else saying completely the opposite, right? And I think that's kind of been there. But I guess to finalize this on this idea of regulation, because I think this is kind of where, you know, these companies don't know what to do, but maybe government on either side. We noticed that the United States government, especially the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, are focusing on border security. We noticed they have hauled in social media companies like Meta and Twitter around their content moderation related to political and the speech. Have we noticed them get hauled in as it relates to drug and or trafficking capacities? We know if there's any legislation and or hearings held about their complicity perhaps in housing some of these, and or the duty to remove these areas and or content from the larger sphere.
They do get a lot of pressure.
They
from
do
the
get
government.
get a lot of.
Yeah,
Interesting.
they've been initiatives being conducted by senators or consuls in order for them to put initiatives or a bill for these companies to be more pressured to regulate this content. So they do have a lot of pressure.
Interesting. And probably some place that we're going to continue to see, especially as social media continues to evolve, right? Probably see a lot more maybe regulation and or individuals taking part in it. I mean, I never would have guessed some of these things. I'm like, my goodness, learned so much today. So that takes us to our time, friends. Let's give Dr. Garcia a welcome. So again, this is part of the International Leadership Series. For those students that are here, please feel free on your way out to sign in if you've not done so already. Feel free to grab some food. And for those of you that are here as well, within the next couple of days, I believe it's by Friday, you'll have an opportunity to go pick up a $10 voucher for food as well here at Aramark as well. So thank you all very much for coming in and hope you have a fantastic time. See you in November.
Thank you, guys.